To start us off, I'm going to hand you over to one of the LINZ duty officers, Nick Donnelly, to give our opening karakia. Thanks, Nick.
Tīmata tātou. Pai te mātauranga, kia marama, kia tupu, kia tiaki, ngā whenua, ngā moana, ngā arawai. Kia whaitaki ngā mahi katoa, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou. Toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi tū te whenua, humie, huie, tai kie.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, Nick. Appreciate that. So with today's session, what we're going to look at is the role of LINZ in an emergency. I feel like at least half of you on the call have heard us present on this a lot of times before. So you'll know what to expect a little bit. So just to say, we really want this session to be about participation. We only do this work in an emergency, so thankfully we don't get to practice too often. Here at LINZ, we're not, all of us aren't working in ArcGIS Online in particular all the time that you might be. And so we just really appreciate your feedback on what works well and especially what we could be doing better. So we're going to give you a tour around our ArcGIS Online emergency group. And we're also going to talk to you about LINZ Basemaps, because a lot of what we do stems from how we process the data into LINZ Basemaps. And we really appreciate that Kate Burns is here today from NEMA. And Kate is going to share some of the work that NEMA are doing to sign the country up to the National Disasters Charter, which will give us access to more data in the future. And then we're just going to round up with a reminder of how to get in contact with us in an emergency. Okay. For those of you who've just joined, we've got a poll. You can either see that in the chat or there might be an icon along the top that says polls. So we'd love to hear from you about what you think the role of LINZ is in an emergency, and we'll come back to that at the end. And we will keep an eye out in the chat if you've got questions, and we'll either answer them during the session or we'll certainly follow up afterwards. So I will hand over to Matthew, who's one of the LINZ Imagery advisors, to share with you about the role of LINZ in an emergency. Thanks, Matthew.
Cool. So if you clicked no on that poll, hopefully this will help you out and provide a bit more clarity. Yeah, so like some of the things that LINZ does do in the, I think someone's just got their mic on. Some does do in an emergency. One of them is sort of 4 things. One's gather data requirements, coordinate funding, provide imagery guidance, and the 4th one is share data. And that's probably the one that that's the one that we're gonna focus mainly on today. Sort of see there's a nice picture of Tasman there. Cool. So what does LINZ not do in a emergency? So we've got reconnaissance, don't do it. Next one, satellite imagery, do that. Aerial photography, do that one. And then we also have drone imagery. And you sort of see we don't do that one as well. So you can sort of see underneath we've got some of the areas that are our focus and some of the things we do focus on. Yeah, cool. Next slide, please. Cool. So what are some of the data sources that we do use? One is we help provide. One's LiDAR, which can be like a really big help to show the change of the land after an event. We help provide bathymetry. Radar or synthetic aperture radar, which sometimes be called SAR, just the heads up around different terms for it, but it's generally a satellite-based platform. And we can provide like a initial flood extent, which is not, I wouldn't say authoritative, but it can give you like a really good idea really quickly on about where the flooding might be, is likely to be. Cool. thanks. I'll pass over to Nick Donnelly now.
Thanks, Matthew. So I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about why this is important and how it can help in an emergency, but also in the recovery phase. And a lot of this is based out of what we learnt through the Cyclone Gabrielle response. So satellite imagery, the higher resolution imagery particularly, really useful for identifying and quantifying the landslides for future planning and understand what had happened in terms of the mass transport of sediment and that sort of thing. The aerial imagery, which is high resolution again, really useful for recovery planning, records the event for insurance purposes and future LIM reports. The flood extents that Matthew alluded to, they can be created from either low or high resolution imagery, but the lower resolution freely available imagery is what we use to get those approximate flood extents. So that can give an indication of where the water is. There was LIDAR that had previously been captured over the area to provide a baseline, and then LIDAR captured immediately after the event in high priority areas that was able to be used for comparisons. And at the moment, there's ongoing work to collect or capture further aerial imagery and also LIDAR over the impacted areas. And that information and data has been published as it arrives. So the, sorry, just getting control of my computer here. So the next thing I'd like to talk a bit about is the LINZ role in an emergency. Sorry, finally worked out how to use PowerPoint, sorry team. So what we do is we activate for an emergency declaration or a severe red rain warning. So those are our triggers to activate. We identify an area of interest, working alongside other response agencies and the lead agency to identify that as best we can. We monitor the freely available satellite imagery for its next pass. We share this information with the lead agency and offer any support, anything we might be able to help with. We liaise with commercial imagery providers, whether that be just to request that they be on standby or monitoring, or whether it's actually to ask them to start capturing work. And we also engage in regular communication with response agencies. And I'll hand over now to Susan.
Lovely, thanks, Nick. I'd just like to go back to the previous point that Nick was making about how the Cyclone Gabrielle data was used. Have you got examples of any specifics of how you've used any of the satellite imagery or aerial imagery or LIDAR data in a response at all that you'd like to share with the group? Please don't be shy.
Hi, Susan. Dragos here from Open Council. Are you
Good man.
Are you asking?
Thank
Sorry,
you.
no. Are you asking the question to the group or to your team at LINZ?
No, to you, to the group. Sorry, Dragos. Thank you.
Ah, right. Okay. I can answer a bit.
Please do.
So,
yeah.
So last year, the first point of contact for us was ISI. So actually, I had to go on LinkedIn to scramble to find contacts. So I found the people from ISI. We got the data about the flood depth, the SAR data about the flood depth. So that was the first thing that we got. After that, we bought the high resolution MaxSAR at 50 centimeters in 4 bands throughout the whole region. That was driven by our resilient land and coast team that used that together with GNS Science to map the landslides that happened across the region. So those were the two the two main uses initially.
The flood depths and the landslides, is that right?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Thanks, Dragos. We've got Shane telling us that they used aerial imagery to assess damage to electrical network in Hawke's Bay. Any other examples of how you might have used that data?
Hi, Emma here from Environment Southland.
Thanks, Emma.
Now, we used the data a long time ago, 2019. You guys supplied us with some satellite imagery, and we used it to draw the extents of the flood. Now that's much improved because now you supply us with the extents instead, which is fantastic because that was quite a time-consuming job due to cloud cover.
That's great. That's great to hear, Emma. That was an unfortunate event, obviously, but a really lucky timing of that passive planet to show that flood that you were having in such detail. And I thought it was a bit of a one-off, and we, you know, because days can go by before there is another pass sometimes for some of the free satellite imagery, but it is interesting just how much information we have been able to extract. So yeah, that's a really good example. Thanks, Emma. We've got Anne, use aerial imagery to assess initial damage to dock infrastructure and laid it in recovery plans as context information. And I think that's a really good point to make, that actually sometimes we can't supply the imagery soon enough to be able to help in a response. But we certainly need to capture it as soon as possible in when we're still in response mode to help inform all those recovery plans, as well as being a benchmark to show what had happened. Matthew, did you want to say something?
No, that was an
happy?
excellent.
No, good. And Sam, yeah, how could we forget? Really appreciated working with you too during the top of the south floods there in taking that imagery and LiDAR. Cool. So if you've got any more, pop them in the chat, but we will move on to the next section. Now that now that Nick's told you a little bit about what the first steps that we take in an emergency. And so I think if we only get one point across to you today, the real simple thing is that there's two places that you can go to look for data in an emergency from LINZ. We know we're only a small cog and lots of other operational data and so on that you'll be collecting, but there's two places that we might be able to find help for you. So one is from our ArcGIS online site and the other is from our Basemaps. So we're going to talk about our Basemaps second, but we'll just have a look in our ArcGIS online site too. And just noting that you might come into the LINZ ArcGIS online site, but we just really appreciate that there's other there that will be sharing into our AGOL group. So certainly NEMA will be putting links in from their area into our AGOL group, and FENS did that from their common operating picture during Cyclone Gabrielle, direct into our imagery too. But if you come in direct to LINZ, it's our AGOL group and our Basemaps. And the thing to remember is that the data that we publish on LINZ Basemaps will continue to be there long after the response is finished. So that's like our catalog, like we have data in the LINZ data service. You'll always be able to go to the LINZ Basemaps to find that data once it's been published. But the reason why we use, oh, sorry, I've skipped ahead. Hold that thought, I'll come back to it. Sorry. So LINZ Basemaps or LINZ ArcGIS Online. So first of all, we need to get you access to the LINZ ArcGIS Online. And so I think many of you that are online today will have already been through this process, and that you filled out our Survey 123 form and you'll have requested access. And a big shout out to Michael Green here at LINZ, who's automated that process for us. So that was a real overhead for us during the cyclone, where we were trying to record in a spreadsheet your requests, your AGOL account name, and your email so that we could contact you in future. Now, it sounds really simple, right? But when you've got lots, as you'll know, you've got lots of emails coming in, just taking the time to do that didn't always happen. So now we've got this beautiful automated process. So I'm just going to take a moment to step you through what that looks like from our end. So luckily, Elizabeth sent us an email this morning. Well, Elizabeth filled out the survey 123 form this morning, and that sent us an email notification to say you need to process this request. That email links to this dashboard. We simply see the results of that survey 123 form. I don't know if Elizabeth's online, but thank you for letting me use your account. So we know that Elizabeth's from Hutt City Council, we know her email, and we know her AGOL account name, and so we're going to grant access. And it's as simple as that, and that will trigger an email back to you to say that you will now have access to the group in the notifications the next time you log on to ArcGIS Online. But as some of you found, that's not always as simple to do that. And that's because we need two things on your account on your side. So this might be for anybody who's watching the recording after the event, because maybe you didn't get this far in joining our group. But in order to be able to join the group, you need to make sure that your profile visibility in ArcGIS is set to everyone and public, and that you have the privileges set to join external groups. So that's pretty much why we've set the ArcGIS Online group up now, so that we can get over some of those hurdles, hopefully as many as possible before the next event. Okay, so you're in ArcGIS Online. What have we got in that group? So we've got 5 items. We've got an imagery layer and a flood extent layer. We've got an editor and a dashboard that we hope you'll find useful, and we've got some guidance documents. So let's go and look at those in a little bit more detail. So just before we dive into that, it might be worth knowing that if you went into the description of the AGOL group, you'll find some information there that might be useful. So down the bottom, it's just a reminder of our emergency contact information, our email and our phone number. And also, if you want to invite somebody else to join the group, there's the link to that survey 123 form so that you can get people to join. And you might think, well, why can't we just send you the AGOL account name? And that's because we want to be able to email you to tell you when that information's changing. So, sorry, I interrupted myself, but as I was saying, the data that's in LINZ Basemaps will always be there after a response, but our intention is only to keep this information in ArcGIS Online for a period of time after the response. So just to help the lead agencies and the response agencies while they'll be busy doing other things, but our intention isn't to create a record of everything in ArcGIS Online. And I'll talk more about why we'll do that in a sec. Okay, so what information is in there? So the whiter icons are the data and the web map that feeds into these apps. So if we focus first on the imagery layer, so our intention is that you could take this URL and you could put this into your apps now, potentially, although you probably don't want to turn it on with that on there. But this is just to let you know that this will be the space where we'll publish imagery in an emergency. So the reasons why we put it into ArcGIS Online is because the data in Basemaps is in WMTS format. But we know that you're not able to take that data into your apps and then take it offline. So that's probably the main reason why we put it into ArcGIS Online. One, some people will be much more familiar working in that environment anyway, so it makes it easier. But the second is also that it will enable you to take this information offline. Have any of you picked up this URL already and put it in any apps? No, was the stern reply. Okay, well, that, I know at Marlborough they were doing that really early on during the top of the South flood. And so as soon as we added new information, that was immediately available to them in their own internal apps in the Emergency Operations Centre. So just have a think about whether you want to pick up that URL and add it into any of your apps before the event, but certainly know it's there, as that's a place to go to get your information. Just gonna take that off there, flip to there. In a similar way, this is a very unexciting image, but in the same way that we've got one place to go to pick up the imagery, we've got one place to go to put up the flood extents. And it is our intention to only have those flood extents there for a short period of time after the data's been captured. So it's our best endeavours to be able to capture that data, but we know it's very much an approximate of the flood extent. We certainly know we're not experts in being able to capture that information. We're just capturing it and putting it up as early as we can to give you a bit of a heads up, and then the idea is we'll take that down so that more informed and authoritative data can be used. So if anybody's got any thoughts on that approach, we would love to have a discussion with you and hear on that. And then I'd like to hand over to Carolina next to talk about the two apps that we've got to where you can request LINZ to help you supply data by sharing with us your area of interest. So I will stop sharing now and hand over to Carolina. So just while we're doing that handover, if we got any questions, I'll just go through the chat there and have a look.
Thank you, Susan. Can you guys see my screen now?
We can. Thanks, Carolina.
Okay, I'm Carolina, and I'm one of the imagery advisors here at LINZ, and I'll be taking you guys through the emergency data request application that we've created. So the main purpose of this application is for to enable response agencies to be able to add and edit area of interest during a response. So the main two functions of the emergency data request application is to first create your area of interest. So we've got the editor tool here, which will enable you guys to do that. So to create an area of interest, you just simply click on this polygon, and then you kind of just zoom into your whatever your area of interest might be, and then you just create click on the map, you create a polygon like this, double click, and this will prompt up this survey form on the left hand side here, if you can see here, and you can fill in whatever region that's on here. We've got little pop down screen on here where you can choose from. I'll just do Hamilton, easy. And then whatever data request that you guys want to put in, we've got these options here. I'll just do other, and then you can choose to if you want to fill in what priority you want to put in, and comments on here as well. What organization that you're from, contact name and emails. Also, you can put in your date of request for us, and the status and what event name. water year, 2024. We've also got this for this option here. And then you can like just follow through and like fill in the rest of this one. And then once you hit like create, this will create this your area of interest, which can be shown on here. And if you want to like edit the area of interest that you've just added into the group, you can like just go back and you go hit select through like the edited features, and then you can like just simply click on like the area of interest that you've just created, and then you can like just edit whatever you want to do. You can like either update or delete, and that's it, gone. But if you want like more information on like the main functions that I've just talked to you guys through, you can always use this little information icon here. It'll take you, it'll show you like instructions on how to use like this editor tool to either create or edit an area of interest. Also, other functionalities that you can use in this application. We've got here like the search button, which you can like use to like search for like your location. And we've also got here the layers widget, which shows you like what layers that goes into the map. We've also got like the legend here as well. We've also got different base maps here that you can like choose from, depending on like your preference. And you can also like add in like your data and what kind of data that you want to add, and you can like use this widget. And through this web app, you can be able to like go to like our dashboard as well, simply by clicking on this link here. So this dashboard, it's like loading. So this dashboard here was created to enable response agencies to see all the emergency data requests that received by LINZ. If you can like see here, we've got like, you can see like the active AOIs that are on here, the total land area as well. And if you can click on the table, you can like see like what area of interest that are there that we have here. And if you click on the actual area of interest, it'll show you like more context about like what region, location, what data requirement that was requested, and also like it'll show you like the date of request, what year, and when we approved and like published the data onto the system. But yeah, that's it for me. I'll pass it back to Susan.
Awesome, thanks Carolina. Please don't worry, obviously the Port Hills isn't on fire again, and Blue Cliffs, they're the two previous events that we've created AOIs for. And just like Joel suggested in the chat, that we should add some data so that you know it's working properly in the imagery and the flood extents. And we think we've done it for imagery, which is the one big image, but we'll certainly put something in the flood extents just so that you can confirm that it's working. That's a great idea, we'll do that. So don't worry about those two AOIs. I've got a little bit of context for what Carolina said, but Dragos, have you got a question before I do that?
Yes, please. So
please do.
I'm just curious how, from your side, how you see it, because I'm from what I see it. If something happens, and then we get the imagery, obviously we will, our businesses and our stakeholders will have to combine that imagery with other kind of data sets in order to get some kind of insights. Why would we go through LINZ when we would put it on our, our systems? Why would somebody? What I'm asking is, what's the benefit of going
to
LINZ versus just putting it on our AGOL and that's it?
That's a really excellent question, and thank you for letting me have the opportunity to answer that. So it really depends on the resourcing that you've got available during the time of the response. So classic is, obviously, most of you know I'm from the Nelson Tasman region, And during the Top of the South floods, I was talking to Pete Inwood, who was the SME for imagery and LiDAR in Nelson, Tasman, who was on a ferry heading over to the North Island during the time of the flood. So he was out of action. I believe that people had COVID, and there were various people who weren't available in the EOC that would normally be there. And so LINZ was asked to step in and help arrange the procurement of the imagery. I think what is probably our biggest superpower, though, Dragos, is to publish the imagery. So and share that. That's probably the biggest thing. So in Cyclone Gabrielle, we didn't have communication with Hawke's Bay and Te Rāwhiti because the communication links were down, as you know. Those guys had already done amazing work and been really reactive and worked with the local flying companies and had arranged to get their own aerial imagery supplied, but they weren't in a position to be able to host that data. So they could just pass it along to LINZ while they're busy working on the response. We can take the data, process it, and get it hosted and shared. And for example, for the ISI data, that was only available with restricted access. So again, we could take over that administration of actually controlling who had access to the data. So it could be a whole range of things that LINZ could get involved in from that space. So from the very beginning, helping you form your data requirements, through to just, or maybe all we do at the end is not even publishing the data, but including it in our AGOL group so that people can see it, and then anything in between there. Does that help? Does that answer your question, Dragos?
Yes, that's really good. Thank you, Susan.
Perfect. Lovely. Thank you. Okay. So just to give a little bit of context about the demos that Carolina's just showed you there about the editor. So we will attempt to work out what the area of interest is really early on, and we will make that available in the dashboard. If you have the capacity to share with us what your AOI is too, then we've now got this editor for you that you can add that information in. And possibly what's even more useful is that you can also go to that dashboard to see what other agencies have requested. So this is a really good example from the Top of the South flood, where Nelson and Tasman in the red and purple had requested specific areas to be captured for aerial imagery. The blue area is Waka Kotahi, where they wanted information for the state highways. And then GNS came along and said, well, actually, we're really interested in Cable Bay. And if we could link all that up together and get that overview, then not only could we crowdsource the data requirements, but we could also crowdsource the funding effectively. And that enabled us to get both aerial imagery and LiDAR captured and the LiDAR processed, which I don't think we would have been able to achieve without all those agencies working together at the time. So that's another reason why you might be interested in that data request, emergency data request dashboard. The eagle-eyed of you will notice that the guidance document isn't in there yet. We've had some really great feedback. Really want to thank Tim Farrier at Hawke's Bay and Simon Planzer at Manaki Whenua for reviewing the document. And also we shared it with all the aerial imagery and satellite imagery suppliers who've given us massive feedback. It's really impressive. And also GNS too for providing feedback. We really appreciate it. We just got a smidgen of conflicting information and we just want to resolve that before we make that public. But as soon as I'm hoping what I can do is when I share this recording with you, then we'll have that imagery document in this ArcGIS online group too. But basically, this document is a checklist of requirements that either LINZ would use or it might help you think about things, data supplier contact information, some potential cost estimates and some case studies of how that information's been used. And there's two parts to that guidance document. One is sort of a nice intro that you might want to share with your controller and your recovery manager. And then the second half is for you as GIS teams and the Intel function to be able to, just some prompts to think about what you might need to do in a stressful situation in an emergency. And I am now handing over to Daniel, who's going to share with you. So that's our ArcGIS Online area. Daniel, really appreciate Daniel being here. Daniel is lead of the Basemaps team, and I always tell that team it's their work that make LINZ look like they're really serious about helping in an emergency, and just a real big shout out to what that team's achieved over the last couple of years. So on that glowing introduction there, Daniel, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Susan. I unfortunately don't have a take control button, so could you please lead me through the first few slides? I will do. So one of the bigger pieces to the puzzle is data sharing in an emergency. We definitely will attempt to get data and share data in any way that we can in an emergency event, but preferably in this day and age, it'd be good to not be using hard drives. And there's obviously some other solutions which are great for sharing small data sets, but not so great for sharing large geospatial data sets. And I really hate, in these emergency event type situations, burdening someone with a bunch of boring and laborious instructions on how to get our organizations connected so that we can share data between us. So we've got a bunch configured and ready to go now. So I think we're in a better space than ever to respond and help out. But I just wanted to share a little bit about how this is working behind the scenes so that everyone was aware if we needed to share data between our organizations in the near future. Next slide, please. So we have an SFTP set up in AWS, which is working quite well for our ongoing BAU with data supply from flying companies. Most days we're getting hundreds of gigabytes of aerial imagery and elevation data from aerial surveys, LandPro, SkyCan, Skyview, and Woolpert. So if there's data collection through any of these companies, we're likely to be able to get it directly from them as soon as it's flown and processed. And I'm sure there'll be others coming on board as well. It can be a little bit more difficult if it's like a one-off, this satellite was passing over at this particular time to have that data sharing pre-arranged, but we'll always do our best to get the data if we can help out with publishing it. Next slide, please. I would think it was like, I think it's would be quite nice to have some regional representation from across the regional councils that are already configured to share data in the same way as those flying companies if we need to share directly between us, which has certainly happened in some of these previous events. We do have Environment Canterbury, Environment Southland, Hawke's Bay Regional Council and West Coast Regional Council to effectively use the same method as the flying companies at the moment. But yeah, happy to help get a few more of you on board, and you can email imagery@linz.govt.nz for that. Obviously the SFTP is not our main channel through which we want to share data out. It requires a bit of configuration to set that up and a bit of hand holding. What we want to do is get data in and then share it out via Basemaps, LINZ Data Service, AGOL, etc. Make sure that we can get the data into those publishing channels where thousands of customers can use it and we don't have to set up something for them individually. So I think I'm going to do a bit of a demo.
Good man.
Wish me luck. Sharing my screen. So just last week, we've published some Cyclone Bowler aerial imagery. This was procured by Ministry of Primary Industries, part of Aerial Surveys Archive. So they've had it georeferenced and auto-rectified and supplied it to us through the means that I was just talking about. and it's up on Basemaps at the moment. So generally what will happen in an emergency or just through day-to-day processing of aerial imagery, when we receive the files, we'll process them into a tile service, and we'll generally share a view in Basemaps that looks like this, so it can be sort of QC'd and checked to make sure that everything looks good before we publish it. There are some tools in here which by default quite handy in an emergency. You can compare the current set of imagery. If we zoom in around here, say, we can see a lot of the landslides that occurred during Cyclone Gabrielle. And if we toggle in the current imagery, you've got landslide damage from Cyclone Gabrielle in similar places. So that's something that we can make available very quickly. This is the nice thing about Basemaps, is that when you share a link to the picture that you're looking at, it'll appear exactly the same configuration, even if you're toggling with some of these layers, as what you see on your screen if you share it to somebody else. So if you need to share something to the mayor's office quickly in an emergency, and we've provided you with this link because we're helping you to publish it, then that's something that can be quite instantly used to share the insights from the imagery around. There's one other thing I just want to briefly show. It's in development, but it's pretty cool. So we're working on doing the same thing for elevation data as well. Effectively, as soon as it lands in our S3 bucket, we'll be able to process it into 3D view with hill shades and color ramps, and get the richness of the 1 meter DEM detail that we're getting through from a lot of these newer LiDAR flights, and do the same sorts of things in terms of draping over aerial imagery and whatnot as well. So obviously really important that we get the insight from the data that's being collected out as fast as possible, and those are a couple of examples of the ways that we can do that. So we also have this LINZ emergency imagery collection group in AGOL now. I've got a couple of slides when we return to the slide deck where you can click the button and join the group. But this collection contains links to those WMTS services that are coming out of Basemaps that you can also use to bring into ArcGIS Pro, or to bring into AGOL without having to figure out the WMTS connection stuff yourself. So if you join this group, which I'm going to do now, then hopefully it'll make that imagery more accessible for you. You should also be able to, jump into a ArcGIS online map and go browse layers, and this is all a public group, so you should be able to do this right now.
It won't be in Living Atlas.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
I forgot one button. Thank you so much. I would have been like, oh man, this worked 2 seconds ago. You can just switch it to ArcGIS Online and then click add, and you'll see it in your map. So I'll stop sharing and we'll go back to the slides.
Awesome. So just want to clarify there, Daniel showed you how to join the group. The idea about that is it puts you in your list of groups, right, Daniel? It's a publicly available group, but just if you want a quicker access, it is possible to join the group. Back to you, Daniel, I think.
So jump to the next slide. If you can. I had a couple of placeholder slides in here in case the demo thing didn't work.
Oh, next slide. Sorry, Daniel, I'm busy replying to the chat. How is that?
Thank you. Next one as well. So that covers off on the emergency imagery collection. And yeah, I was just going to clarify here that if you join the group, then it'll appear in my groups. So this is a screenshot from ArcGIS Pro. and you should be able to see that in the catalog, and then drag and drop in the emergency response imagery. So yeah, that's a group where we'll try to keep the longer term links to the emergency response imagery up to date there. Cool. And Joel just had a question about when you would use Daniel's group versus the other group. So that group is for the long-term storage of the emergency response related imagery. So we've got Bowler, Gabrielle, Westport flood, Kaikoura earthquake, Port Hills fire. For when you're in response mode, then the other group is more relevant. Correct me if I'm wrong, Susan.
Yeah, so the other thing is that the data in this group is in WMTS format. So we're just making it super easy for you to be able to add it to your ArcGIS, as Daniel demonstrated, but you won't, that's the data that you won't be able to put in your apps and take offline and then sync back if you're out of Wi-Fi. You'll need the native ArcGIS data to do that, which is why we've got that readiness group set up for you to do that. So two different formats, but the WMTS data will stay there. The native ArcGIS won't at this point, unless you give us a really good reason that you want us to keep it up there for something. We've been here, and that's us, Daniel.
Yes, thank you.
Happy, brilliant, thank you. So I would now like to hand over to my esteemed colleague, Kate Burns from NEMA. Over to you, Kate, to talk to us about the International Disasters Charter.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Susan. Yes, I'm Kate Burns with Operational Systems over at NEMA. So the International Space Charter for Space and Major Disasters is a global collaboration through which satellite data is made freely available to support emergency response efforts following major disasters around the world. So NEMA has just now become an authorised user to activate the charter on behalf of both New Zealand and our neighbouring Pacific nations. So our understanding of the charter through becoming an authorised user will help our ability to assist disaster response efforts in the region. We've got 10 days following any event to initiate the charter, and we have just in recent days enacted the charter on behalf of MFAT to provide imagery to support the response over in Papua New Guinea following their landslide. So our operational systems team are currently liaising with LINZ, MFAT, AGOL Technologies Disaster Response Program and other key stakeholders around confirming various roles and responsibilities around using the charter. So that'll be the critical next step for us in allowing us to define and deliver the process and procedures by which the imagery is obtained, received, processed and disseminated for imagery and value-added products that are obtained using the charter. So for us, that's just one example of why NEMA see LINZ as being the spatial lead for New Zealand, and as such we are intending to include them in our National Civil Defence and Emergency Management Plan when we get round to revising that. And so I will now hand back to LINZ to speak to some of the technical aspects of the products that are available when we enact the charter. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate, and over to you, Nick.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Kate. So yeah, the Disasters Charter gives us access to a pretty wide range of satellite imagery. There's over 35 constellations available, close to 300 satellites. A few of the key constellations are listed down the left-hand side there, which many of you will be familiar with some of those. So exactly what gets collected will obviously depend on the nature of the event, the availability of the various constellations and the satellites, what sort of ultimate products might be needed. So there's a bit of it's a process of discussion and confirming requirements, but I guess the key thing is that it gives us a really good opportunity to get the capture underway as soon as we possibly can. And it is very much targeted at response. There are various licensing requirements, so it's not necessarily going to be a full replacement for some of the other imagery that we've been talking about throughout the rest of this presentation, but a pretty important and I think exciting step forward for New Zealand in terms of our ability to provide imagery in a response situation. Back to you, Susan.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. I see we've got live intel happening in the chat. Kate, if you've not seen this message there from Keith at GNS about the PNG landslide. So great linking up there as the emergency management community does so well. I was going to run a poll, but I see we're running short on time. I was going to run a poll on how many. Yeah, who's that?
Dragos from Auckland Council.
Hey.
Just a question. A question for Nick. So
sure.
How
yes.
how
Sorry,
does
Dragos,
this?
do go.
So how does this imagery licensing work? Do we, for example, if something happens, and let's say Maxar or ISI capture something through the charter, do we get free access to it? Do we just get the end maps that they create? Do we get the raw? The data. How does it work?
Yeah, really good questions, and to be honest, Dragos, that's something that's sort of the discussions we're having at the moment to understand that. It is so the different providers do all have their own licensing restrictions, so it doesn't necessarily get around some of the challenges that we have, say, around making things publicly available with satellite imagery. There may also be conditions, for example, that it's able to be used in the first 10 days or the first 20 days of the response, say the raw data. We may be able to develop products from that can then be used longer term, but probably can't say too much more than that, just because it is one of the things that we have on our list to get greater clarity for ourselves, so that we're then able to share and provide advice on that. So a little bit early days there at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, so no magic one there on licensing or costs, but just as Nick says, that we don't miss that opportunity to have the data captured at short notice. Okay, these questions are great, Dragos. Thank you, and to everybody in the chat, I really appreciate that. So we just want to wrap up now, and I'll pass you over to Brad Cooper, who's another of our duty officers who you might work with.
Oh, thank you, Susan, for the introduction. So yeah, I get the lucky job of doing the review slides and the wrap-up slides in this presentation. So just in review, you guys have had a look at under the hood at how LINZ responds in emergency, our role in emergency, and the types of assistance we can provide, and the recent developments and that assistance. And just on the screen here, you see the two main channels you'll be hearing from us in an emergency. So your AGOL, which is typically for the response itself, and of course you got the imagery collection that's put out through AGOL, but Basemaps has more of that archive over time. Yeah, so next slide. Thank you, Susan. I won't take control on this one. So just a bit of a recap, and also on the emergency contacts. So in an emergency, these are the people you'll likely be hearing from. These are the LINZ duty officers, LINZ geospatial duty officers. So myself, Gareth, Nick, and Susan. And that's our contact details. So we all monitor that inbox, and we have a duty schedule. So we'll be checking on that thing, and just a bit of a we will be in touch with you usually, but just in case, there are contact details. Another thing about that duty phone as well is it is forwarded, so there can be a bit of a delay there in getting in touch on that phone, but we will pick up eventually. And that's it. And also, yeah, we've got an AGOL group as well, so we can use that to share things with you. I think, is there a question slide on the end there?
No, that's us. Well, I thought I'd keep that
us.
slide up to let's do that.
You can share your poll.
We've got, yeah, thank you. We've got a little bit going on in the chat there. So obviously some of those links aren't working for everybody. So the imagery collection, the seasons collection of the data in WMTS format is open and public, and you should be able to access that no problem. If you can't get access to the readiness AGOL group, it might be because we haven't sorted out the invites. And I learned from Carolina, who needs somebody from Eagle, thank you, that those invites tend to last only 14 days. So I will make sure that we resend those invites to you. I just want to wrap up with a shout out to a few people, but just if you've got any last questions, just have a think about that now, because we have got a few minutes at the end. I want to do a big shout out to Fire and Emergency. The common operating picture that they created in Cyclone Gabrielle was fabulous. The fact that they shared their 111 calls, so that really helps us build up a picture more confidently about where the area of interest is amazing. And we really appreciate that they spread the joy and share our imagery as part of that work too. I need to give a really big thank you to Ed Cook. A lot of this, of course, in emergency management was Ed's idea, and he's helped give us a real leg up in doing this work and regular reviews what we do to make sure it's fit for purpose. So thanks a million to Ed. We've talked about the people that have already reviewed the guidance document that we'll share with you soon. So Tim Farrier at Hawke's Bay, who was incredible during the response too, as many of you were, I know. Sorry, just to call out Tim there. And Simon Planzer at Manaki Whenua, GNS, for their feedback on what imagery is most useful in a response, and the data suppliers. Big kudos to Liam and Kate at NEMA for pushing forward with that International Disasters Charter. It feels like an Oscar speech now, but I just want to do a big shout out to everybody from LINZ who's on the incident management team. I really appreciate working with you in emergency. You're a great group of people to work with, and hopefully we can keep on working together to make a difference. And just shout out to you all in a response. You know, having come from local government, I know what it's like to sit in that hot seat a little bit when there's complete madness and people in uniforms all around you. Just a big shout out for the work that you do in a response. If anybody's got any last questions, we've got 2 more minutes before we wrap up. Sorry, I should have done questions before I started into my
one that was asked,
moment.
and I'd like to know as well.
Thanks, Josh.
The recording, I was a bit late, sorry. Conflicts. Love to watch it. How do I get access to it?
We'll send it to everybody who is on the invite to this group, and we'll also share it with GMA. Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Cool. But I might just hold off. If we can get that imagery doc out, I might just hold off so that I just share it with you once. Okay. Thank you. I might pass to Nick then to give us our closing karakia. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Susan. Nō reira tīmata tātou. Kuea te kaupapa, ka rea ngā hua, ka rere ngā arawai. Kua mau te mātauranga, hei ara hina ngā mahi o toitu te whenua, kia tau te rangi mārie, ki runga i a tātou katoa. Omie, huie, taikie.
Take care.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thanks all for coming on board. And yeah, just shout out if you've got any more questions or suggestions on how we could do this better. We'd love to hear from you. Go well, and hopefully not see you too soon in the emergency field. Thank you.